Hi and welcome back. In this module, the fifth module of the Revit 2024 Level 1 training course, we're going to be looking at creating basic families. So hopefully you've successfully completed the previous modules and we're ready to move on to the next part. Now, since this is a Level 1 course, we won't be looking at advanced complex family creation, but we are going to be looking at how to customize and set up system families and how to create your own loadable families with some parameters to kind of get you started and help you to understand how that process works and how to put it all together. So up until now, we've been working with Revit Families quite a bit. And in the previous module where we created basic elements, you've been creating system family components such as walls and floors and foundations. And we've been loading and placing families into the project such as doors, windows, furniture, plumbing fixtures, etc. So you already have a fairly good understanding of what they are and how to access them. In this module, we're going to be focusing a little bit more about how to customize system families and understanding them a bit better, and how to create duplicates and new types of these components. And we're going to be looking at how to create your own basic family with customizable parametric parameters set up. So let's jump into it. System families are predefined in Revit and cannot be created or deleted. So this is important. You cannot create or delete wall families, for instance, or floor families, right? They're part of the system and they're always there. But their types and instances can be modified, deleted, duplicated, and customized, right? And then, of course, examples of system families include walls, floors, roofs, and ceilings. All right. Now, creating wall types, I'm going to show you how to do that. So let's jump straight into Revit, and we're going to start a new project. We're not going to continue working in this module with our ongoing exercise, which was the apartment that we are rebuilding. We're going to do that later again. For now, we're going to step away a little bit, and we're just going to open up a blank architectural template project, and we're going to look at how we create duplicates of existing families. Right. Now, an easy way to start is to select an existing component, right? So let's find something that is fairly simple. I'm going to use this 440 block wall family. Now, if you don't see the same family types as me, it's probably because you're using a different template. The one that I'm using is the built-in one from the British templates. So if I go to my options and I look at file locations and I look at architectural, you can see this is the template that I'm using. Default gbrenu.rte. That's the Revit template that I'm using. Yes, I'm using the New Zealand families and libraries as well as the Australian ones, but I actually prefer the British template and the way that it's set up out of the box. So that's why I'm using this one for the architectural template startup. Generally, I do structural modeling, but again, for the purpose of this exercise, I prefer this template. Okay, enough of that. So now that we've selected our family type, we can go in, and before we start modeling, we can choose edit type. So what we want to do is we'd like to create another type, let's say a 200 millimeter or a 250 millimeter block wall, just for demonstration purposes. And how would we go about doing that, since it doesn't exist in the list here? We choose something that is close to what we want. We click on the duplicate button and we can give it a name. So here, instead of 440 BLK, we're going to change that to 250 BLK. All right, that creates a new type, but it doesn't really, just because we named it 250 BLK doesn't mean the width is going to be 250. We still have to go and edit that. So we choose this edit button, and in here, it's going to create this wall assembly builder for us. And this one is quite simple. It's only got one layer, and this is the layer we see here. So if I make this 250 and I click on OK, and I click on apply and OK again, it means now we have access to that wall. So when I start placing this component, and I'm going to use the rectangle tool just to quickly create 4 walls, it creates those for us using the parameters that we have set. Now, as we've mentioned before, when we work with type and instance parameters, it will change the elements accordingly. If we change the type parameters, it's going to change every component that belongs to this family type. If we only change the instance parameters here, it will only change it for the selected element. Okay. Now, what if we had more complex walls, for example? And I'll show you what that looks like again. So if we click here and we go to something like this wall here, and we choose Edit, and we look at the composition of this assembly, we can see that it's got multiple layers. All right. So you can see it's got a finish here. It's going to be brick material of 102.5 millimeter thickness. Then it's got an air pocket there. Then it's got a fiberglass batter. Then it's got a concrete fill, and then it's got plaster here again at the end. Notice if I wanted to change these materials, I can do that by accessing the materials here or over there. If I want to change the thickness, I can change them. And if I wanted to remove any of these layers, I can go ahead and remove them. So the way to remove them is you select the row and you click on delete. Notice that updates my assembly here on the left as well. If I wanted to insert a layer, I need to choose where I want to insert the layer. And then if I click the insert button, it's going to create that for me. I can also move this up or down. So if I click this button, it's going to move it across as I need to. And if I change this to a value, it's creating that layer for me. And I can go ahead and assign this property to that component. Okay, so that is how you would set up new types for these families, right? So that's a new type that I've just created there. I didn't save it, but that's how you would go about doing that. And the same would apply for any of the other system families. If I wanted to create a structural floor or an architectural floor, and I didn't want this particular one, I can select something closer to what it is that I want. If it's an in situ cast concrete one, I can find something that's close to it. I can then choose on edit. I can see this has got a little profile cut out here, which we're not going to cover in this session. But if I wanted to remove that metal deck, I could just delete that. And I can say, let's make this here 200 millimeters. It's a 200 millimeter slab that we want to create. That's what it's going to look like. I can rename this to 200 floor. But now, because I didn't duplicate it, it means I'm actually overriding this existing floor. And it means that that one will not be available anymore. I've overridden it now. That original one is gone. And now I've replaced it with this one. So that would be another way of doing it. But bearing in mind that when we do that, we actually override the existing component. And when I create this floor and we view it in 3D, that is what it's gonna look like. So there is the floor that we created there. Okay. So that is how we edit and manipulate system families. Now, if we want to create families that are loadable, we need to use family templates. And there are a whole lot of them. So these are pre-configured files that are specific to the type of element that we want to create. So let's keep this open actually. And I'm going to choose here to go new, and I'm going to create a new family. When I do that, it's going to open up my family template location, and there are so many different templates for creating families depending on what we want to do. So we can see there's one for columns, there's one for data devices, detail items, doors, ducts, fire alarms, generic components, which means they kind of fit with anything. And if they're generic, do we want them to just be freely placed, or are they wall-based, which means they're always attached to a wall, such as a light fixture or a door? Are they face-based? Is it ceiling-based? Are they floor-based? Are they line-based? So there's a whole lot of different components, and really family creation in Revit is a whole training course on its own, and it's really quite a comprehensive topic. So for now, we're going to just stick with modeling something simple like furniture. We're using the metric furniture template for this one because we're using a metric system, and we're going to be creating a simple table. So just a basic wooden table, but we're going to build some smarts and parameters into it. So it's not just going to be a volumetric thing, it's actually going to have some smarts. All right, now, before we dive into it, let's just go through the theory a little bit. So we spoke about the different types of family templates. Considerations for creating a new family is, looking at the purpose and the usage. Again, it's going to be a face-based or a floor-based or a free component that we're going to place. The template selection is based on what we're going to create. We're going to be using reference planes, so we're going to create some parametric components in order to define the table that we're going to create. And for our exercise, I'm not going to worry about the width and the length of the table, but I'm going to worry about the height, just for the purposes of our exercise. So we're going to create some reference planes for that, and we're going to create some parametric parameters that we can adjust to automatically create the geometry for that 3D component. There's detail level, which I'll discuss in a little bit, but basically we can set a detail level for components. So if we want to see something in a fine level or a medium level or a low level, we can actually specify that. So if I just quickly jump back here to our open project, and if I create a structural beam, and this is a universal beam, I'm going to draw it from here to here. Okay, it's telling us we can't see it because I am in the wrong level, I guess. So let me just quickly jump to this level. And if we switch on that, no, it's not there. Where is my beam? There it is. Why can't I see it in the other level? So that is at level 0. I should be able to see it here. I'm not. Great, terrible example. Let's quickly just open up a structural family template because that's probably why I can't see my structural components. So apologies for that. Let's open up a structural template, and then I'm going to quickly create a structural beam. All right, now if I draw this from one end to the other, notice that this beam only displays as a single line. All right. That's because my detail level is set to coarse. If I set it to medium, suddenly I start to see more detail. And when I set it to fine, it's going to show me even more detail like roundings and things which are not present here, but it would show me even more information. So when I place components based on the detail level, I can actually define what it should look like. And that's because a lot of the time, you would be able to determine whether something should be shown more in a sort of a symbolic sketch fashion or whether it should be a really accurate representation of that object's geometry. Okay, so that's enough of that. Let's start off by creating our parametric table. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is I want to create an extrusion. Okay, so I'm going to draw in a rectangle, and I'm just going to kind of guess where the centers are here without really worrying too much about it. I'm going to exit the rectangle command, and then I'm going to go to annotate, and I'm going to choose aligned. Like we've done before, I'm going to click on this line. I'm going to click on the reference, and I'm going to click on that line and place my dimension. But I'm going to switch to equal, and I'm going to lock those distances so that it's always in the center of this reference point. That's going to be my placement point where these two lines intersect, and I want my table to be centered around that. So I'm also going to be doing the same for the opposite direction. Click on equal, lock that, and we are ready. Okay, so now we've got the geometry, but we haven't extruded anything yet. What I'm going to start off with here, before we start locking in parameters and making those variable, is I'm going to say, let's start 750 millimeters from the ground, and let's extrude up to 800. So it's going to be 50 millimeters deep, this table, and it's going to start 750 millimeters from the bottom of the insertion point, and the top of the table will be 800 millimeters. Okay, I'm going to click on accept or finish. And let's have a quick look at this in 3D. So if we open up the 3D view here, we're going to see that. Okay, good. Now let's draw in the, or let's start modeling the parameters. So we can see here that we've got an extrusion end, which is at 800. Now, if I click on this button here, so the extrusion start, if I click on this button here, associate family parameter, it's going to allow me to create a new parameter that's going to control that element. And what I'm going to call this here is the height. And let's make that the height at the bottom. All right. I'm going to click on OK. And I'm going to click on OK again. So now you'll see this is grayed out and has now got a parameter value assigned to that. But the top of that extrusion is going to be a calculated parameter. So I'm going to say this parameter is going to be height top. Okay. And we've created that one. Now that we've done this, I can go here to this button and I can look at my family types. And if I look at the parameters here, you'll see that there's a formula. So for the top, I can actually say this is equal to height bot plus 50. So when I hit enter or apply and OK, it means that whenever I adjust that parameter, it's going to adjust the values that I've got here, this start and end extrusion. Okay. So let's go back to the reference level. And what I want to do now, we've got this shape. I want to add the legs in here as well. So let's quickly do that. So I'm going to go back to create. I'm going to choose extrusion and I'm going to use the rectangle tool. All right. Remember, when we start to draw, it's going to be at level 0. Okay. So we're starting at level 0. I want this to be, let's say 30 by 30 for the legs. It's fine. 30 by 30. And I want this extrusion to be based off those parameters that I set up earlier. So for the top of this extrusion, right, I want the extrusion start to be at 0. And I want the extrusion end to be a parameter. And I'm going to make this parameter the bottom of the table top. Okay, the bottom of the table top. I hope that makes sense. All right. And let's say accept. And before we do anything, let's just see in 3D if it's doing what we're expecting. Yes, that looks good. Okay, I'm going to select that. I am going to use the mirror tool here, and I'm going to pick this axis to mirror it across. Then I'm going to do the same. I'm going to select there and there. And again, I'm going to use the mirror tool to mirror that across. All right. Okay, so we can see here now that we've created these legs and we've got a tabletop and they are driven by parameters. Now let's go ahead and save this. So I'm going to choose save as, and we're going to choose family. Okay. And we're going to place this in a folder somewhere. I don't want to place it in my family folders here. So for the purposes of this exercise, I'm just going to place it here in my documents and we'll just place it in here. Okay. Let's call this one family 3. That's okay. You can assign a more appropriate name, but for now, that's all I need to do. Then back in my Revit project here, I can load this family into that project. So when I've got a project open and I'm busy working on a family, I can actually say load into project. And when I do that, it's going to allow me to place that family somewhere so that I can start testing the parameters and see if it's doing what I'm expecting it to do. So if I select the family, we can see that we've got some instance parameters here, but over here we've got type parameters. And if I access the type parameters, look at that. We can see the height bottom and we can see the height top, and it gives us a little preview of that. And if we change the height at the top to 900, it's going to update the height at the bottom, right? And if we change the height at the bottom to 750, it's going to change the height at the top. So those are now automatically connected to each other, and there are some parametrics happening there, which is great. Now, at this stage, I'm going to hide the walls. And I want to see what's happening with this table here. So I'm going to select this table, and I'm going to say, let's go to the edit, the types again. And I am going to change that to a ridiculous height, just so we can see it actually adjusting. And there you can see our table is adjusting accordingly. Okay, so it's as easy as that. That's how we create these parameters. And there's that beam that I couldn't find earlier. But there's the table that we've created. And it's placing it at level 0, which is going to be at the level that we select. And then based on the parameters that we change, it's going to adjust that automatically for us. So there is our first parametric family created in Revit. Okay, I hope that helps, and I hope that you're able to replicate that. And I'll see you in the next module. Thank you. Goodbye.